Every civilization has left something behind. The Egyptians built pyramids, the Romans built roads, the Chinese invented paper, and humanity as a whole looked at random plants and thought, I wonder what happens if I eat that. Some experiments ended with medicine, others ended with someone inventing the fastest way to make terrible decisions. For thousands of years, drugs have been used in religious rituals, medicine, warfare, recreation, and even as everyday products sold legally. Some were discovered by accident. Some were created inside laboratories by scientists trying to solve completely different problems. Others came from ordinary-looking plants that secretly contained chemicals powerful enough to change the way the human brain works. Some built billion-dollar industries, some destroyed empires, some started wars, and a few completely changed modern medicine. Today, we're counting down 10 of the most famous drugs in history, where they came from, who discovered them, how they're made, what they do inside the human body, and why they've become some of the most controversial substances ever known. So grab some popcorn, because today's list contains flowers, mushrooms, leaves, powders, crystals, and enough bad decisions to keep historians employed forever. Let's start with a plant that's been around longer than many civilizations themselves. Number 10. Cannabis. If there's one plant that's been praised, banned, taxed, worshipped, and argued about more than almost any other, it's cannabis. Its story begins thousands of years ago in Central Asia, where early civilizations first grew it, not to get high, but to make rope, clothing, paper, and food from its incredibly strong fibers and nutritious seeds. At some point, people noticed the flowering buds had a very different effect than the rest of the plant. Exactly who discovered this is lost in history, but once they did, cannabis quickly spread across Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and eventually the rest of the world through trade and migration. The plant produces a chemical called THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, which travels through the bloodstream and reaches the brain within minutes when inhaled. There, it attaches to cannabinoid receptors that help regulate memory, mood, coordination, appetite, and the perception of time. As these normal signals are disrupted, reactions become slower, concentration becomes less consistent, short-term memory can weaken, and ordinary events may seem unusually funny or fascinating. Many people also experience increased appetite and dry mouth, while higher amounts can cause confusion, anxiety, or paranoia in some individuals. The exact effects vary greatly depending on the dose, the product, and the person using it. It's incredible that one ordinary-looking green plant has sparked centuries of debate between doctors, governments, scientists, and lawmakers, all because of a single chemical hiding inside its flowers. Next, we move from a peaceful-looking flower to one that helped shape empires.
Number 9. Opium.
A beautiful flower usually isn't something people fear, unless that flower happens to be the opium poppy. More than 5,000 years ago, ancient Sumerians discovered that making small cuts in the poppy's green seed pod released a thick white sap. Once exposed to air, it dried into a sticky brown resin known as opium. What seemed like an ordinary plant soon became one of the world's most valuable substances. Egyptians carried it across trade routes, Greek physicians prescribed it, Chinese merchants sold it, and eventually entire nations fought wars over its trade. Inside opium are natural chemicals called alkaloids, like morphine and codeine. These compounds attach to opioid receptors in the brain and spinal cord, blocking pain signals while slowing activity throughout the central nervous system. As the brain's communication slows, movements become less energetic, speech softens, breathing becomes slower, and intense drowsiness often follows. Pain that once felt unbearable can become far less noticeable, which is exactly why opium became one of history's most important painkillers. But the brain gradually adapts to repeated exposure, making the same amount less effective over time and increasing the risk of dependence. In high doses, breathing can slow so severely that it can become life-threatening. It's almost unbelievable that one simple flower could influence medicine, global trade, international politics, and millions of lives throughout history. But eventually, people looked at opium and thought, we can make this even stronger.
Number 8. Heroin.
Sometimes, history's biggest mistakes begin with good intentions. In 1874, an English chemist named C.R. Alderwright modified morphine in a laboratory while searching for a better medicine. Years later, in 1998, the German pharmaceutical company Bayer began selling the drug under the name heroin, believing it would be a safer alternative to morphine and an effective cough suppressant. At the time, doctors had no idea they were introducing one of the most addictive drugs ever created. Heroin is made by chemically processing morphine, which itself comes from the opium poppy. Because of its chemical structure, heroin crosses the blood-brain barrier very quickly. Once inside the brain, it's converted back into morphine, where it binds to opioid receptors even more efficiently. This rapidly slows activity throughout the central nervous system, reducing pain while causing extreme drowsiness, slower breathing, reduced heart rate, and decreased awareness of the surrounding environment. As repeated use changes the brain's reward system, dependence can develop quickly, making it increasingly difficult for the brain to function normally without the drug. What was once advertised as a medical breakthrough soon became a global public health crisis, proving that even scientists can accidentally create history's worst inventions. Next, we'll leave flowers behind and enter the world of a white powder that became the symbol of power, wealth, and crime.
Number 7. Cocaine. Long before it became associated with crime movies and organized cartels, cocaine began its journey high in the Andes Mountains of South America. For thousands of years, indigenous communities chewed the leaves of the coca plant to reduce fatigue, suppress hunger, and help them cope with the thin mountain air. The leaves themselves contain only small amounts of the active chemical, so their effects are much milder than the purified drug known today. Everything changed in 1859 when German chemist Albert Niemann successfully isolated the plant's main stimulant and named it cocaine. Suddenly, a traditional leaf had become a powerful white powder. Cocaine works by preventing the brain from quickly recycling chemicals like dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. As these chemicals build up between nerve cells, the brain's reward and alertness systems become overstimulated. People often become unusually energetic, talkative, restless, and confident, while their heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature can rise significantly. The stimulation also places heavy stress on the cardiovascular system, increasing the risk of heart attack, stroke, seizures, and dangerous irregular heart rhythms. With repeated use, the brain gradually produces less dopamine naturally, making everyday activities feel less rewarding and increasing the likelihood of dependence. It's amazing how a leaf once used to survive harsh mountain climates eventually became one of the most profitable illegal commodities in modern history. Next, scientists created a stimulant so powerful that even armies began using it. Number 6. Methamphetamine. Not every drug begins in a hidden jungle or grows on a mysterious plant. Some begin inside a laboratory with a scientist trying to solve a completely different problem. The story of methamphetamine starts in 1893 when Japanese chemist Nagai Nagayoshi successfully synthesized it from ephedrine, a natural chemical found in the ephedra plant. In 1919, another Japanese chemist, Akira Ogata, developed a method to produce it in crystal form, making it easier to manufacture. At first, methamphetamine wasn't seen as a dangerous street drug. It was prescribed by doctors to treat conditions like asthma and nasal congestion. During World War II, Germany, Japan, Britain, and the United States even supplied it to soldiers, pilots, and factory workers to help them stay awake for long missions and long shifts. For a while, it looked like the perfect solution to exhaustion, until the side effects showed up. Methamphetamine is one of the most powerful stimulants ever created. Once it enters the brain, it causes an enormous release of dopamine, the chemical involved in reward and motivation, while also increasing norepinephrine, which controls alertness and the body's fight-or-flight response. Instead of the brain releasing these chemicals in carefully controlled amounts, methamphetamine floods the system all at once. The result is an overstimulated nervous system. Heart rate rises, blood pressure increases, body temperature climbs, and sleep becomes increasingly difficult. Appetite is often greatly reduced, leaving many long-term users with severe weight loss. As repeated exposure damages dopamine-producing nerve cells, memory, judgment, emotional control, and decision-making can all become impaired. In severe cases, people may experience intense paranoia, aggression, hallucinations, or believe things that simply aren't real. What began as a medical invention and wartime performance enhancer eventually became one of the world's most destructive stimulants, leaving lasting damage that can continue long after the drug is gone. Next, our countdown takes a strange turn because the next drug wasn't discovered on purpose. It was an accident that completely changed neuroscience. Number 5. LSD. Some of history's greatest discoveries happened because someone made a mistake. LSD is one of them. In 1938, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann was working for the pharmaceutical company Sandoz, searching for medicines that could improve blood circulation. While experimenting with a fungus called ergot, which grows on rye grain, he created a new chemical called lysergic acid diethylamide, or simply LSD. The compound seemed unremarkable, so it was placed on a shelf and largely forgotten. 5 years later, in 1943, Hofmann accidentally absorbed a tiny amount through his skin while working in the lab. He suddenly noticed unusual changes in his perception, becoming the first known person to experience LSD's effects. Curious about what had happened, he intentionally took a measured dose a few days later and rode his bicycle home while the drug took effect. That famous trip is now remembered as Bicycle Day. LSD is incredibly potent. A dose measured in micrograms, millionths of a gram, is enough to produce powerful effects. Unlike stimulants or opioids, LSD mainly acts on serotonin receptors, particularly the FHT2A receptor, disrupting the normal communication between different regions of the brain. This altered signaling changes how the brain processes sensory information. Colors may appear unusually vivid, familiar objects can seem unfamiliar, time may feel distorted, and thoughts can become unusually connected or fragmented. At the same time, judgment, coordination, and the ability to distinguish internal thoughts from external reality may be affected. Because every brain responds differently, reactions can vary dramatically, ranging from confusion and anxiety to profound alterations in perception. Scientists were fascinated. Governments became concerned. Pop culture embraced it. Scientists studied it. Then, many countries banned it. Not many laboratory accidents managed to become one of the most recognizable drugs in history. Next, scientists tried creating another medicine, but ended up inventing the drug that would become the soundtrack of nightclubs around the world.
Number 4. MDMA, or ecstasy. If you think MDMA was invented for parties, think again. Its story began in 1912 when the German pharmaceutical company Merck synthesized 3,4-methylene dioxymethamphetamine, better known as MDMA. Surprisingly, the company wasn't trying to create a recreational drug at all. It was simply working on new chemical compounds that might one day be useful in medicine. MDMA was patented, documented, and then largely forgotten for decades because nobody realized what it could do. Everything changed in the 1970s when a small number of psychologists began exploring whether it could help patients communicate more openly during therapy sessions. By the 1980s, however, the drug had escaped the laboratory and found a completely different audience. Nightclubs, dance festivals, and underground rave scenes embraced it, earning MDMA the nickname ecstasy. MDMA works differently from most stimulants. Instead of mainly flooding the brain with dopamine, it causes a massive release of serotonin, a chemical involved in mood, emotional processing, and social behavior, while also increasing dopamine and norepinephrine. This intense chemical surge temporarily disrupts the brain's normal balance. Pupils often become noticeably larger, heart rate and blood pressure increase, body temperature rises, and sweating becomes more intense. Many users also experience jaw clenching, muscle tension, dehydration, and reduced awareness of physical exhaustion, which can become especially dangerous in hot environments or during prolonged physical activity. After the drug wears off, serotonin levels can remain temporarily depleted, leaving some people feeling mentally drained, emotionally low, or unusually fatigued for a period afterward. Scientists continue studying MDMA for carefully controlled medical uses, while authorities continue regulating it because of its risks outside those settings. Few drugs have traveled such an unusual path, from forgotten laboratory compound to one of the world's most recognizable party drugs. Next, our countdown goes much further back in time, to a drug that humans didn't invent at all. Nature had already been making it for millions of years. Number 3. Psilocybin mushrooms. Long before laboratories existed, long before chemistry had a name, nature had already created one of the strangest psychoactive substances on Earth. Psilocybin mushrooms, often called magic mushrooms, grow naturally on every inhabited continent except Antarctica. Evidence suggests humans have been using them for thousands of years, with ancient rock art in parts of Africa and ceremonial traditions in Mesoamerica, indicating that these mushrooms played important roles in spiritual and religious practices. Indigenous cultures, particularly the Aztecs, even referred to them as the flesh of the gods. The mushrooms contain psilocybin, a compound that the body converts to psilocin after it's consumed. Psilocin interacts primarily with serotonin receptors in the brain, especially those involved in mood, emotional processing, and the integration of sensory information. As communication between different networks changes, perception of colors, sounds, patterns, and time can become significantly altered. Thoughts may become less linear, emotional responses can intensify, and ordinary surroundings may seem unfamiliar or unusually meaningful. At higher doses, judgment and awareness of reality may also become impaired, making the experience unpredictable. Because every brain responds differently, the effects can vary widely depending on the individual, the amount consumed, and the environment. Unlike many drugs on this list, these mushrooms weren't invented by humans. They were simply growing in forests, waiting for someone curious enough to pick them. And now we reach a drug so powerful that just a few tiny grains can become deadly.
Number 2. Fentanyl. Some substances are measured in grams. Some are measured in milligrams. Fentanyl is so powerful that its effects are measured in micrograms. The story of fentanyl began in 1960 when Belgian chemist Paul Janssen developed it while searching for a faster and more effective painkiller. The goal was simple: create a medicine powerful enough to help patients suffering from extreme pain during major surgeries and serious medical conditions. The result was a synthetic opioid estimated to be many times stronger than morphine. In hospitals, carefully controlled fentanyl became an important tool for anesthesia and severe pain management. But outside medical settings, illegally manufactured fentanyl became one of the most dangerous drugs in the world. Like other opioids, fentanyl works by attaching to opioid receptors in the brain and nervous system. These receptors influence pain, breathing, and feelings of reward. When activated, they can greatly reduce pain signals while also slowing many automatic body functions. The biggest danger comes from its effect on the brain's breathing system. Because fentanyl is extremely potent, even a small dosing mistake can suppress breathing to dangerously low levels. A person may become unconscious, lose normal breathing patterns, and require immediate medical attention. Its strength also makes accidental exposure or contamination in illegal drug supplies especially dangerous, because users may not know exactly what substance they are taking. Fentanyl represents one of the biggest challenges in modern drug history, a medicine designed to save lives that, when misused, can become incredibly destructive. A chemical created to fight pain became one of the most feared substances of the modern era. And now, we reach number 1, The drug's so common that many people don't even think of it as a drug at all. Number 1. Alcohol. It doesn't grow in a secret laboratory. It doesn't require complicated chemistry. It can be found in homes, restaurants, celebrations, and cultures around the world. Alcohol is one of the oldest psychoactive substances known to humanity. The history of alcohol goes back thousands of years. Ancient civilizations discovered that natural fermentation could transform fruits, grains, and honey into drinks containing ethanol, the chemical responsible for alcohol's effects. Archaeologists have found evidence of alcoholic beverages being produced over 9,000 years ago in ancient China. From Egyptian ceremonies to Roman feasts, alcohol became deeply connected with culture, religion, trade, and social gatherings. Unlike many drugs on this list, alcohol is legal in most parts of the world. But that doesn't mean it is harmless. Ethanol works mainly by affecting communication between brain cells. It increases the activity of GABA, a chemical that slows brain activity, while reducing signals controlled by glutamate, which helps with alertness and memory. This combination can slow reaction time, reduce coordination, affect judgment, and change emotional control. As more alcohol enters the bloodstream, speech can become unclear, balance can become unstable, and decision-making abilities can become heavily impaired. Long-term heavy use can damage the liver, heart, nervous system, and brain, while increasing the risk of addiction and serious health problems. The strange truth about alcohol is that it is both one of humanity's oldest social traditions and one of its longest-running public health challenges. From ancient civilizations to the modern world, one simple molecule has shaped celebrations, conflicts, economies, and countless human stories. And that's the history of the top 10 drugs that changed humanity. And there you have it. 10 substances, 10 unbelievable stories. From ancient plants growing in the wild to chemicals created inside modern laboratories, every drug on this list shows one thing. Human curiosity has always been powerful. Sometimes it creates medicine that saves millions of lives. Sometimes it creates substances that cause unimaginable damage. The difference is not just the chemical itself. It's how humans discover it, control it, and choose to use it. So, what do you think? Which one of these stories surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like and subscribe, because who knows what strange chapter of humanity's story we'll explore next. See you in the next one.